Good morning, good evening, wherever you might be watching this video. Today we got a little special something going on, a little mix up of the content. I have Steven and Whale here with Flareforward, and we're gonna, have a nice discussion today. There's a lot going on in the space. It's been some things that come up these last couple of days that we want to kind of do some reactionary content, get our thoughts out, and see where the conversation goes. So with that being said, Well, if you don't mind starting the video, let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, so yesterday I watched this video from Zach Rector. I watched his content. He's an XRP guy. I'm an XRP guy as well. Like, let's start that. And before we go, I started with this part where he talks that he's bullish because I don't think that people should get ahead of themselves. I think that somebody from the outside, this guy has valid concerns, and let's address them. I think that the concerns of this guy, I'm sure other people in the XRP community and other networks also have those concerns. So let's start.
The more bullish I'm going to be. I'm a little bullish on Flare right now, despite all my frustrations. I'm still bullish, but I'd be a lot more bullish if we could get this stuff rolled out this year. And I will say this, just a side point. This has nothing to do with Flare. I mean, it relates, but generally speaking, I don't know what takes these developers so long. Right? I'm not a developer myself, so it would be inappropriate for me to comment.
Okay, so yeah, let's start by saying that the guy understands that he's not a tech guy. He's just an investor and he's a YouTuber. And that's a valid point because I feel like most people that are in this space are not tech savvy. So I think that that's a good base for this video and conversation.
Yeah, I mean, most people aren't really tech savvy, so it's kind of hard to understand what the developers are doing behind the scenes without necessarily being ingrained in it. So, I mean, he did mention outside of his frustrations, he's definitely excited about what's going on Flare. So, and I mean, I've been there before. I've been frustrated about something, especially related to Flare in the early days. So I can understand being frustrated, but then kind of having to get your emotions in check, I guess, if that's the right way to say it, to see the forest for the trees, if that makes sense.
Flare has delivered. I mean, we've all tested out Songbird. It works. It's there. The thing is, part of an evolution of a tech or anything else, when you find a problem and you find a solution, you have to stop what you're doing, reassess, and evolve. That is what Flare has done each and every iteration. They found a problem in their tech, in their process, and then they found a better way to do it. And that is why it's taken a little bit longer to deliver. And then, when you talk about developers, I've worked with developers, those guys are trying to build something. So they're guessing at how long they're going to be able to write this code and how long these things are going to take. It's guessing. It's not like a blueprint, not like they built this thing hundreds and hundreds of times, like a house, like, oh, we're going to have the framers up in 2 days. We're going to have the concrete down in 4 days, average projections, everything else. You're talking about building from scratch on tech that very, 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 very few people develop on top of it. And building stuff that you've never built before. So, I mean, it's a myriad of problems you're evolving. And so, to say that they need to hurry up and deliver, I don't agree. I think they have delivered and I think they're evolving, which to me is what I love to see.
Totally. Okay, so I'm not going to play the whole thing, but he speaks about all this post from Hugo where he says that the moment that if XRP lands on Flare, they will have all of this. So let's watch this part.
Index AI agents via Flare AI Kit. When XRP staking lands on Flare, XRP will have access to liquid staking and restaking. The world will be our oyster. When? Though, right? This is the question we're all asking. This sounds great, and I don't even know what half that stuff means on what he's laid out there. And that's all great. Sounds like we'll get some utility. But when is it going to arrive? If we don't get F assets live before XRP Ledger gets native smart contract functionality, why is anybody going to be coming over to Flare? And this is a question that I have for not just Flare, but other smart contract ecosystems and blockchains that have been built around the XRP Ledger. Is without the XRP community bridging over and coming over, will you be able to build out enough of an ecosystem and community to stand on your own? I understand that the XRP community is not the end all be all. And we shouldn't just be rolling out the red carpet for the XRP community because, hi, are we going to be bridging over to Flare? Why are we going to be bridging over to Corium? Why are we going to be bridging over to Zahao? And all these other smart contract networks that built around the XRP ledger? Why would we be doing so when we have native smart contract functionality coming? The token inflation.
Yeah, I think those are valid points. Independently of just the Flare communication, it's what makes your chain special that I'm willing to risk my hard-earned money and putting it there. So I think those are valid questions. And I think that that's what I was referring about delivering. I mean, Flare, it's definitely running. It's a beautiful blockchain with functioning apps and the network just works. I mean, it's one of my favorite networks to use independently of I've used several and I think that Flare just works. And I really, really like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is my standpoint. So I definitely understand where he's coming from to a point. But at the same time, anytime I hear an influencer or just a community member, regardless of blockchain that they prefer, speak like this, it kind of reminds me of what Crypto Siege said way back in the day. I think it was 2021. He speaks about or he spoke about in one of his videos, going where your assets are treated best. So for this particular concern, the XRP ledger can get smart contracts, and they're working to get smart contract functionality, which would be great. It's been something that's been missing from the XRP ledger for years now, right? But you also have the XRPL EVM sidechain. You have other options like Flare and their F asset protocol, things of that nature. The whole thing that I feel like a lot of blockchains, especially XRP, the XRP community, what they've been missing is optionality, right? Having a good problem to have is too many options, in my opinion, right? So when you hear about Doppler Finance, Ondo Finance, Strobe Protocol, Peersys building out the EVM sidechain on top of whatever else Flare is building, whether it's the XRP staking, FXRP, being able to secure protocols with staked XRP, things of that nature. To me, that's almost like a buffet, right? I'm at a buffet. I have my XRP. I have all these options to decide how to leverage my XRP. To me, that's a good thing. That's a wonderful place to be. I don't think Ethereum holders are complaining about all the options that they have and when are they coming, right? Like, when are they coming? I get wanting and the excitement of wanting to put your assets to work, but I much rather land on quality products and be able to choose amongst whatever buffet, and whatever I choose, that's my choice. That's what works best for me, things of that nature. But a lot of people, they get stuck in this win moment instead of just looking at it like, okay, when these things do in fact land, right? I have all these options. To me, that's a good place to be.
I got to laugh a little bit because if you guys noticed on the Flare channel, I posted a snippet from an interview with she was a nuclear engineer who turned into a product manager. I don't know what blockchain she was running, but one of the biggest things she said was the best time to understand a blockchain and the best time to be a builder is in a bear market, because you don't get all this win. The moment you hit the bull market, that's when we get this right here. It's so funny. If you go back and look at the timeline, there's a post like 2 days ago about a very similar, like, oh, this is what makes it better being in the bear market, because all you have to worry about is the building. You don't have to worry about the win people, because it's quiet. Another thing I think is like you said, buffet, like, XRP is not the only token option on Flare. We already have ETH. Like, ETH is already there, right? Nobody really uses as much as they could, but we've got ETH. It'll have Bitcoin, it'll have Doge. Oh, and it'll have XRP, which is 71% of the total market value of crypto right now, or at least last I checked, a little over 71%. So it opens up, Flare is going to be open up to not just XRP, right away. It's going to be open to a buffet of people to make their money work for them. And then, like Hugo said, this is just one of the first products they're rolling out. These guys are machine learning people. They're AI people. This isn't their thing. Like, they're building this so that it can add value to the network, so then they can deliver a real product. So
yeah, and then the other part that I would say to Zach is I would rather have a secure product that I can fully trust, that I can put my XRP and sleep at night, than something that is rushed just to deliver, and then I don't know if it's going to be good. Because we have had so many of those on crypto where they just rush to deliver a product, and then one day you're like, oopsie, we messed up.
Ooh, yep.
So yeah. I think that I really appreciate the fact that Hugo and the team on Flare are really focusing not on making a quick cash, but actually delivering an excellent product that you can fully trust because it has been battle tested. And then the other thing that I would say is, like, yes, when we all want FXRP and F assets, but if it was easy, there would have been 10 chains already that have built it. And the fact that the right. EVM sidechain, because I've been hearing for the EVM sidechain almost as long as Flare. I've been hearing from XLR that they have delivered the bridge. I have not seen any bridge functioning. So, yeah, there's a lot of companies and blockchains and people that are craving for this product to be able to give yield for XRP. But if it was that easy, it would have been already built. So that would be my comments against his concern.
But also keep in mind, like, the way in which amendments are voted on and introduced in the XRP ledger can take some time. Think back when NFTs got introduced to the XRP ledger. That was a big thing, and NFTs have been in the market for a while, at that point. So, I get it though. I get it. You see other chains like Ethereum, and several others, they're able to, deploy their assets, leverage their assets in DeFi protocols, earn a yield, all types of cool things. But for XRP ledger, you've had to sit out for a while. At this point, but you have some cool things coming. You got Strobe Protocol, which is building a lending protocol on the EVM. To me, if I'm an XRP holder, and mind you, I indeed do hold XRP, I think despite all these different options, it's like, we're finally seeing the level of development that I would have expected years ago. And I'm happy for that, and whether I deploy all my XRP as an F asset and FXRP, or I kind of divvy it up amongst all these other options, that's a good problem to have. Just repeating that point. That's all.
And then just to finish, I think that the XRP community have learned what it takes to be a good product that takes time. And sure, many other chains and meme coins, they pump thousands of %, but XRP right now, it's one of the strongest, and it has taken much longer than we all wanted. But because they are solid product, we are where we are right now. So I think that if you zoom out, like XRP has been up, what, 13 years since 2012? Flare has been up for 3 years. So I think we just need to
through a bull run yet.
Again?
It hasn't even been through a bull run yet. It's a baby compared to chains, right?
Correct.
XRP has seen several bull runs, several.
Cool. All right, let's continue.
They dropped it all at once. It was a mistake to write this out. Shouldn't have been done. They dropped it all.
This one here.
Whatever it took. The exchanges want more money. Pay it up. The exchanges aren't working. Figure out why. It should have been done. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, so he talks about changing the airdrop structure.
Yep.
And there's two parts here. One is that, sure, a lot of people held XRP on exchanges and it was a nightmare. And basically what they wanted to do, well, the first thing is like the airdrop wasn't going to come 100% the first day. It was going to be distributed over 36 months in the same way that it's being distributed now. So it's not like you would have gotten 100% of your Flare in day one. It's just that by doing this, if an exchange went down in that 36 months, then those people would have missed out on those airdrops. So by doing this, it gives power to the people that are actually using the network instead of having people that are just going to be dumping for 36 months. So I personally have benefited quite a bit from this change of model. I actually did a grok calculation yesterday of what would be the difference if I had bought $50 of worth of Flare the first of each month throughout the whole airdrop. And yeah, the difference was monumental because once you buy some Flare, you are entitled to the airdrops for that Flare. And before, no matter how much Flare you bought, the airdrop would have gone to the original holder. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I understand the contention amongst the airdrop changes, but I mean, again, it's going back to the whole point of zooming out. If the goal was to broaden the exposure of Flare Network to not just the XRP community, but to other chains like Bitcoin or Ethereum or anybody else that may be interested in what a chain could offer, such as Flare, then I think you go with what we end up having now. And yeah, well, like I did some early calculations. I was only going to get a very small amount of Flare back in the day. But with the changes, I mean, I was able to, I don't know, like quadruple, 16x the amount of Flare that I ultimately ended up with. So, I mean, if you took advantage of the opportunity, then obviously you're not complaining. But if you sat back and you kind of just took the victim route, I guess you could say, then yeah, you complain about the airdrop changes. So that's just the way I look at it on that side of things.
Well, I want to look entirely different. So first of all, you see what happens with people in impatience, right? And that's what we're hearing right now, complete impatience. So let's assume Flare did that, where they gave it to those people. Well, what are those impatient people going to do every month? The moment they get their airdrops, they're going to dump it. They have no reason to stay involved with Flare. So now Flare can't build a base. They can't really build a community. All they're going to do is hand over a token that somebody else is going to dump, and nobody's going to buy because the people are dumping it so hard because they don't believe in it. So what Flare did is pivot that to, we're going to reward people who take the time to be with us through the next evolution. And those are the people who need to be rewarded. Those are going to be our base community members. And we're going to make sure that those community members help us grow, which is kind of exactly what's happening. I mean, you look at, this guy's putting out a video. None of us are paid by Flare. Well, we got our Flare ambassador, but Ace and I are not paid by Flare to have this conversation or spend these times doing this thing. So why do we do it? Because we got involved and we were able to see this, which we would not have gotten on that initial drop. And we would have had way less, reason to stay in. And Flare would have had a much harder time. I mean, I think they'd be much lower price than they are now had they went that route and allowed these people to just dump every month.
Yeah.
I would have gotten, I don't know, 3,000 Flare over the 36 months. Like that's nothing. And the fact, I mean, I've been buying Flare. I've been putting money into it because I believe in it. But now, like, I have much more than that. I mean, I think like everything in crypto, paying attention gets rewarded. And if you're not paying attention, if you're distracted, then in a way you get punished. But it's also, I understand that it's hard to pay attention to everything that is happening because there's so much happening all the time.
Right.
Yeah,
so I kind of,
you can either go 1 mile wide and an inch deep, or you go one inch wide and a mile deep. You got to choose which way you're going to go.
Right. No, I definitely agree with those points, but I kind of wanted to focus on like the delivery aspect that he kind of brought up towards the end of that clip. So he was saying like drop it all at once, right? And deliver all this functionality at once, which if you've ever delivered software functionality or any product really, whether it's software or not, but especially in software, that's almost always a bad idea.
I mean,
right?
Testnet proved that having that, which most people don't have, is super valuable. I mean,
right.
XRP had that issue with the AMM that they had to claw it back and do all kinds of voting. I mean, it was a live just screw up.
Right. Which to me proves that the team at Flare have good foresight So, definitely appreciate the pivots, even if it does extend and delay things. I appreciate every pivot because they always have a valid reason. It'd be different if Hugo was coming out, or just anybody from Flare was coming out saying, yeah, we're pushing off F assets, or we're pushing this off, and they didn't give any valid reason. So let's just talk about the layer cake situation, right? So I'll be totally honest with you. When Hugo came out and said that they were essentially deprecating layer cake, I was a little sad. I was a little disappointed, because when you think about the original idea of layer cake, even layer cake was a very novel thing. Like, nobody else was doing bridging like layer cake presented to, or proposed to do bridging, right? So obviously now they've opted for protocol managed wallets, which we'll see in Flare 2.0. But if they would have delivered layer cake, how much of that development time would have been taken away from this next jump that we're seeing in Flare 2.0? With really bringing artificial intelligence and leveraging the data expertise that Flare has to really make something like artificial intelligence possible in a decentralized way on chain. To me, that's a much bigger opportunity than bridging. There's several bridging protocols out there. Obviously, we're using one through Stargate and Layer 0. So there's options out there that were sufficient enough when it came to things like security. So if they would have dropped all of this functionality at once, including Layer Cake, then I think that would have taken away from Flare's true ability to separate itself from all these other chains, right? I mean, I remember they were talking about a relay. Well, now it seems like they've done more research into relaying prices or Oracle services to other chains. If it's not if it's not bringing in enough revenue to justify the service, then why would I spend time as a business doing that function? Where am I getting? I'm spending all this time doing something that's bringing close to nothing back home, where I could have spent all that time working, delivering, and developing, around an opportunity that would have been much greater, such as, I don't know, Flare 2.0 or something like that.
100% delivering something unique to you. I mean, bridging was not unique. It wasn't unique. It was, like you said, others did it. So if you're trying to be unique, use what's out there and then be unique.
Yeah, I think part of coming back to what they were saying, Hugo's vision has been evolving because this is such a fast evolving ecosystem, and he's just realizing it's like, hey, we wanted to do a bridge, but then by the time we're to the point where we can deliver, we realize that there's so many other bridges that it's like, why do we compete with them? If somebody has a good product, let's focus on something that makes us unique. Because what I believe is that at some point we're going to have different networks doing very specific things really good, and then working together to achieve whatever needs to be achieved. But instead of everybody competing with the same product, it's like, how do we excel at a specific thing that then when other chains need that, they can come to us. And then when we need other products that other chains are excel at, then we go to them, and then they all work together. So yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty of synergies coming across these networks, like the XRP ledger and the Flare network. I mean, we should be embracing each other, and several other chains. We should all be embracing each other, trying to learn how synergies can occur amongst our chains, and really get to that omni-chain, idea of, all of these chains working together. You're really not knowing which chain you're using when you're interacting with specific protocols, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the player community, the hippie community, like, we want everybody to succeed, because when everybody succeeds, we're going to succeed. I mean, that's just all there is to it, because, if it grows as it should, people are going to want options, right? They want options. We do. So having an option is, like you said, Ace, more options, the better.
Right.
All right, let's continue.
Not US based. Hugo's in Dubai. Flare Labs is decentralized. I don't know where the entity's located at, but it's not in the US. That's enough, right? We cannot check off that it's a US based crypto. That's a problem.
Yeah, so Hugo has mentioned that if things go, like, he's stepping a little bit ahead of himself. He's talking about the no tax for American-based cryptos and everything, and that's just speculation at this point. I mean, Hugo has said that if that was a good move, that they're willing to do that change. So I think that I could agree with him to a certain degree, and a lot of people in the community has asked Hugo about it, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, because, like, doing the change to the US and then they're like, oh, no, nothing has changed in the legislation, then that would be a bad move, in my opinion. But just to say that Hugo is not close to that idea of relocating to the US, if that was a good move by them.
Yeah, I'm with you. That was a premature knock. That's not a knock. Like I said, I mean, Hugo already mentioned it. He's very open to that move, but until they draw it up and say, hey, you got to have the corporation here to get that for everybody else, then those decisions get made. So I think to say it's a knock is crazy, because, like you said, Hugo has said it's on the table. Like, he will move his family if that's what it requires for. So I mean, that to me is not a knock. That's a bonus. I got the founder going, I'm going to uproot everything if that's what it takes, and that's going to make sure that we're going to be successful. Yeah, you don't get that from, I don't know, Brad Garlinghouse going to uproot everything to move. He probably would, but it's not many founders will uproot everything, because that's not a small request. But he's already said he would.
Yeah. I mean, and even as a business, you have to really analyze those types of decisions before you just make them. Because like you alluded to, well, if they made the move prematurely and then the United States decides to change their mind or whatever could happen, then you're kind of stuck, right? Because that's a very expensive move. Like changing headquarters is not cheap, I'm pretty sure. So if you want to do that, you kind of want to be sure in your decision making around that and not just jump the gun. But I mean, even the current US based companies that are developing blockchains and cryptos, they're not benefiting from some tax, benefit or anything like that right now. So that's still very much so speculative, which is totally fine being speculative. But I think when you include speculation in current decision making, I think that's when the water starts getting muddy.
Yeah, and Flare, by the time that they established and everything, they decided that Dubai was the best place to do the headquarters because of the current legislation, and they can't move like 5 years in the future because like if we go there, then like you said, if we get a different administration in 4 years, everything might change again, and then like you're stuck. So yeah,
hold on. Imagine if they would have been in the US in 2019, right? Let's say they developed in US 2019 and they were along with Ripple, right? Because they got some Ripple grants. I mean, the SEC would have slapped them with a lawsuit, and guess what? Flare would be dead because they didn't have the capital to fight any type of lawsuit like Flare did, like XRP did. So I mean, being out of the US probably saved their business, to be honest.
yeah. All right, let's continue.
XRP Ledger smart contracts are on the way. I already laid this out. You guys know that. That window of opportunity is closing. And I think it very well could already be lost because it's a race right now. Is XRP Ledger smart contracts going to go live before F assets do? I mean, we're closing up on that opportunity.
Like I said before, we talked about this before. I agree to a certain degree. I do believe that you can't just like wait forever and then, but at the same time, I do not think that risking security for rushing, it's a worthy trade. That's kind of like, we already talked about this before.
Yeah. And I think that's the main point there is ensuring that your product is indeed secure. Because I mean, Hugo's mentioned before, he says that, he feels that most people in the industry are a little too lackluster with other people's funds and hard-earned money. And that's something that he can't really fathom doing. So the fact that you're hearing somebody say the quiet part out loud in that regard says everything, right? And even when XRP Ledger gets native smart contract capability, that does not change the ethos or, in my opinion, the reason for FXRP or even the XRP restaking or whatever they're going to call it, right? Like to me, that just adds on the opportunity for all of those products to synergize in some way. You're bringing demand for an asset. So at the XRP Ledger getting native smart contracts or even the EVM sidechain being available, that does not negate the reason Flare should or should not release F assets or support FXRP, in my opinion.
Totally.
Yeah, I think, when we did our interview, one of the coolest things, with Hugo that he mentioned was, coming up from the finance industry, the big thing that was ingrained in him was fiduciary responsibility. The importance you have when you are managing or handling other people's money, right? So he is one of the few that I would say is solely focused on that and a product. Everything else he could care less about. At the end of the day, him and his team want to be able to look themselves in the mirror if something went wrong and said, we did everything we physically could to protect the money of the people who are using our product. Not every ledger can say that. I mean, we've seen it happen time and time again. So that resonates with me more than anything else.
100% agree.
They need simplified marketing. They need better marketing. They need somebody who can dumb this down for them because people aren't going to invest if they don't understand what's going on here. And to me, it's not because what they're working on is not great. No, what they're working on is great. The utility there is awesome. As long as it can get delivered, it'll be great. But they need to be able to simplify it down so that the regular person can kind of understand what they're investing in.
I think that, yes, I 100% agree. And we have talked this about, and then I think that here at Flareforward, that's part of what we're trying to achieve, to be a bridge between the developers and the common people. At the same time, I'm not sure that retail investors are the target audience for blockchains. I think that we are in a very unique opportunity that just a random guy can go and invest and use these blockchains, but I'm not sure that we're the target audience.
In its current state, I would think you're very, very accurate. But I think, their goal, Flare's goal is to dumb it down. In the last interview, like Flare 2.0's goal is to dumb that down where, you can do something on Flare and not realize that you didn't do anything on Flare. You actually did it on the XRP ledger and somewhere else because of the TEEs and protocol managed wallets. So, it might not seem that way, but I believe that is their ultimate goal, to make it super easy for the retail investor to use.
But what I understand is that's going to be like retail users are going to be using a protocol that is built on top of the Flare network, not necessarily interacting directly with Flare. I mean, a little bit in the same way that XRP And Ripple is not targeting like people like you and me. They're targeting big
Oh,
institutions
yeah, I get
that then they're
that.
going to develop applications that then you and me can use. I don't know. I think that's something that I've been trying to figure out. Like, what's the relationship between blockchains and retail users? And that's something that I've been trying to understand. Like,
They have
what's that connection?
blockchains have a really difficult time because they have to attract developers to build. And then those developers either have to be good enough to attract users, which generally, I mean, Ace, I know you're a semi-developer. Developers aren't business people. They write code and they come up with crazy great ideas. But to sell their product is something that's probably not good. I mean, look at the Google Hackathon and different things. Those are usually 2 and 3 person teams. I mean, it's not some organization. So you got 2 or 3 kids, young adults who are super, super intelligent in coding, not necessarily sellers, right? So they want to build a product that's cool. And then Flare's Flare's trying to also help them find users. So I mean, it's a very complex scenario that they've got. And one of the cool that video I've watched that lady, is she talked about there are 2 different types of developers too. There are developers who build stuff that just seem cool, and there are developers like in other countries who develop actual things that are useful right now. So I mean, you even have that scenario where some of these developers are developing cool things. For instance, Finance is a cool product, but without good liquidity, is just a cool concept right now until it fully functions.
And the way I look at it is, early on, you'll always have your super users and then you'll have your casuals. I think those who have been in blockchain, whether from an investment standpoint or a development standpoint, whatever role you're taking in the world of Web3, I would consider you a super user. Retail and the casuals, I think we're just now really starting to get to a point where certain products and certain innovations are targeting that group. So when someone brings up marketing, especially for a technology like Flare, I don't think you can market that well to who I would consider truly retail or a casual user. Like, retail is not going to care about the native data protocols that Flare has and how they do something that no other blockchain is doing right now. Unfortunately, those casuals are not going to care about that. The people that care about the tech are the Google Clouds, the Red Date Technology, the other countless institutional partners that they're either partnered with currently or they're working on getting a partnership together, especially around the XRP staking as a service. Who I think or what I think should be marketed to retail are the products built on these technologies. So, for instance, if I am looking to move some cash out of my high yield savings account because it's just not high yield enough for me for the level of risk that I'm taking, I am going to want to look at a Kinetic or a Cyclofinance or something like that. How can I make a better yield using this technology than I would be able to with a regular bank? To me, that's the products that would be marketed to retail, not the technology that are powering the products, if that makes sense.
Totally. I think that the technology that powers those products are what allow those products to be built. And I think that,
Right.
yes, for example, if you think about XDeFi from Santiago Velez, he has a reason why he chose Flare Network to build upon. I don't really care what those reasons are. I just want to be able to use a futures platform that I can trust that is not going to be manipulated. So
Right.
yeah, I think that this point, and the other thing is that like retail do not have enough liquidity to actually make markets. Like if it was only up to us, then no blockchain would be successful. Like I was looking at the liquidity in XRP, like the AMMs. There's not enough liquidity, and that's just retail right now. Like we would eventually need big institutions to come in and put big money for those networks to really function how they're supposed to. So yeah. All right, let's continue. Go
I
ahead.
think the hackathon delivered exactly on one of the things Ace just kind of said, where those guys created a tool that you could scan or take a picture of your portfolio, and it could give you a comparable option or better option, depending on what you're asking for, on Flare's blockchain. I mean, that's right there is a great retail product in development. That would be retail.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and retail do not need to know how that is possible. You just have to
Right.
trust that Flare has the technology for you to be able to upload an image and get a good financial advice, if you will. And I don't need to know why. Like they're making that product, so I don't have to care how that works. Like I said before, it's like sending an email. You don't know. I have no idea how email protocols work. Like if I send a Gmail to Hotmail, I have no idea. I just send the email and I know that it's going to get there. And I think that that's the point where we have to get.
Maybe.
Right. One last point, and then we can move forward. But when I started my journey of like really getting into the world of technology, my dad, he was in it already, so he has experience. He sees the world differently, right? He and I would butt heads quite a bit. And one thing he said to me kind of has stuck with me since then. It's people aren't going to care what asset they're spending or swiping or they have, as long as when they go to the grocery store and they swipe their debit card, it goes through and they can walk out with their groceries. That's all they care about. They don't care that it's XRP. They don't care that it's Bitcoin. They don't care that it's Ethereum or any of these other tokens. Can I take this and actually use this for how I need it? And can I get what I want? If I can't, I don't care. I'm not going to use it. If I can, again, I don't care. I'm going to use it because I can get what I want. So something to keep in mind with a lot of these technologies and the way we think about it, retail versus institutional.
All right, let's continue. Otherwise, it's going to get too long.
The other chains. Hugo says that it's not something that they're interested in, which is providing oracles, price feeds, data to other blockchains, which I don't understand why not value to these other blockchains by providing oracles. I think that it's a missed opportunity.
Because it's not a business. Like, it's not a good business to provide data to other blockchains. And I think that coming back to what we've been saying is like Flare needs to be a viable business with a good business model, and just doing things for the sake of doing so that they can brag about it, that does not pay the bills. That does not make a successful blockchain.
Yeah, it's like pivoting to a low margin, low profit opportunity. Like, why would you pivot to a lower margin, low profit? There's a company out there who'll do it. They could probably even undercut you, right? It's like you need to understand what your business model is and stick to what's good. Now, if you want to evolve, which that's the great thing Flare's always shown, they're willing to evolve. But I mean, Hugo put the numbers up. There was no money. I mean, I was because again, all of us were yelling the same thing the moment we heard that XRP went with what, Chainlink or PIF. You know, we're like, well, why not Flare? Why not Flare? And then Hugo posts the data, and you're like, you know what? I wouldn't do that either if I were you. Makes sense. There's no money in it.
Right. And I'm sure there's somebody at Flare that is constantly scanning the market, looking for new opportunities, and not only evaluating those opportunities, but once certain decisions have been made, I'm sure that that individual or that team is re-evaluating those decisions to make sure that they are heading in the right direction. And yeah, like you said, Stephen, when it came out that Ripple decided to go with Chainlink for RLUSD price feeds, I looked at that a little, with a side eye. But then when you kind of dive into it, okay, that makes sense why Ripple would go with Chainlink, because that's Chainlink's business model. That is not Flare's business model. If there is, to your point, Will, no money in relaying Oracle services to other chains, then why would I spend time and resources doing so?
Yeah, I think Zach, what you need to remember is that Flare is not only about price feeds; it's also having like a eye in the sky. So the data connector allows operations to be like watch operations on Web 2 or other blockchains. So the important thing here is that if you can trust that an operation happens somewhere else, and then you can also trust the execution, like have a trustless on both sides, that's what gives value to Flare, not just throwing data feeds that then you're competing, like it's a bad business model, and then you're competing with another one that's a race to zero. Like that's how blockchain, or that's how businesses go broke.
Well, right. And throw out the other part, right, that he overlooks on that aspect too, right? When we were talking about PIF and Chainlink, stuff like that. I mean, we saw Hugo have a really nice, fun exchange with the CEO or one of the founders over there. I'm not sure which one it was, but after Whale and I actually talked to these FTSO and the data providers, it's actually those datas are easy to manipulate. It's not that hard to manipulate. And so when we actually were talking to these guys and learning from them, there was obstacles for people that came into Flare to try to manipulate Flare. Luckily, we have a substantial amount of data providers who are protecting their product, right? So they're out there guarding Flare as well at the data level. When you have 10 of your buddies, and again, I'm not saying they're the buddies, but 10 or 20 data providers, and it's just a general conversation, maybe a contract, who knows? But unless you're talking and getting involved, those guys can still manipulate the market. It would only take a small consensus of them to manipulate the market to make a few $1 million. And
right.
Legislation, what are you gonna do? If they're not in the US, what are you gonna really do?
Yeah, that hyperliquid situation is it's unfortunate, and it was definitely a head scratcher. Some of that decision making that went on into that. But I think we should be open to having these conversations, and especially in regard to Chainlink, it just seems like we're trying to address the same problem, just going about it differently, and that should be okay. That should definitely be okay. Because how do you, if everybody agrees with you all the time, how do you test your thesis? And what I saw Hugo doing yesterday, or whatever day that was essentially testing his thesis of his vision for Flare, that the Flare team's vision for the network, and why they went, they decided to go about it in the way in which they did. That is obviously different than what a competitor like Chainlink or Pith went about it. And that's another thing. If Hugo is saying that Chainlink and these other chains aren't necessarily competition for Flare, and that's not a slight to them, it's just the fact that we're in two different stratospheres as far as business models and approach. So really there is no competition for Flare. I don't think that's arrogance or anything like that. I think that's just being super transparent and honest about the approaches and what one network cares about versus the other.